Hi, everyone. Welcome to our ALF training webinar series. Today, we're going to talk about ECC training, which is Extended Congregate Care. And on the webinar with me is Cheryl, my wife, beautiful wife. How are you, Cheryl?
Hi, good, thanks. How are you?
Yep. And we've been putting off this ECC training for a little while just because we've been doing so many other trainings. But so this is going to be part of the initial 4-hour training, and then also part of the renewal, the 2-hour training as well. So should we get right to it, Cheryl? Got a lot to
Sure.
cover. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. We're going to start with the Florida statutes, 429. And let me know if you can see what I'm looking at.
Got it.
All right, so let me
Are
just
you on the
scroll.
license required fee? No, back up.
Yeah, license required fee. But let me just show everybody where we started here. So this is at leg.state.fl.us statutes. Anyway, it's a 2015 version, and you can always click on this. This will give you the latest version, this drop-down box. And from there, you select the chapter. So whether it's assisted care communities, assisted living facilities, adult family care homes, adult daycare homes. But right now, we're under assisted living facilities, and you click on view entire chapter. So basically, we're going to go over the license requirements, what it takes to become licensed. There are some recent changes, so we'll cover those, and then we'll go into the actual rules. Cheryl, you want to start?
And what the surveyors are looking for too.
Exactly, the Aspen regulation sets and probes. So basically, I'm sorry. Basically, there's three types of licenses, which we know. It's just standard license, extended.
Four.
Oh, I'm sorry. Four types of licenses. Standard license, extended congregate care license, limited nursing services license, and limited mental health license. And so this webinar, like we said, is on the extended congregate care license. All of those other licenses, it also requires a standard license, and then it's got a specialty license on top of that. So if you have an ECC license, you also have a standard plus an ECC, or if you have an LNS, you have standard plus LNS.
Right, and the ECC license, the purpose of it is to enable residents to age in place in a residential environment despite their mental or physical limitations that might otherwise disqualify them from residency in a facility.
Yep. And that's the only time I'm going to say it, but that's similar to all of the facilities, right?
Right.
Okay. Let's see here. So
they also need a service plan in the ECC. I mean, they need a service plan in all ALFs too, even the standard license. But the service plan is a written plan developed and agreed upon at the resident and the resident's representative, and it addresses the physical and psychological needs, abilities, and personal preferences of each resident receiving the ECC services. The plan shall include a brief written description that is easily understood of what services shall be provided, who shall provide the services, and when they will be rendered, and the purpose and benefits of the service. That also goes along with any ALF. We all have service plans, but there has to be an actual ECC service plan in an extended congregate care facility.
Yeah, where are you reading that from? Because I'm
on 2 of 37. I'm just under the definitions.
Oh, you're under definitions. Ah, okay.
Yeah,
That's why.
I was just going through those.
I see. Service plan. Here we go. Okay. Got it. All right. So we move on to licensing. Okay.
Yes.
So so I was actually ahead of you. So service plans, you covered that under definition. And like I said, there's 4 types of licenses. An ECC license shall be issued to a facility that has been licensed as an assisted living facility for 2 or more years and that provides services directly or through contract beyond those authorized in paragraph A, including services performed by persons licensed under Part 1, Chapter 464, and support services who would otherwise be disqualified from continued residence in a facility licensed under this part. An extended congregate care license may be issued to a facility that has a provisional license a provisional extended congregate care license and meets the requirements for licensure under paragraph 2. The primary purpose of ECC services is to allow residents the option of remaining in a familiar setting from which they would otherwise be disqualified for continued residency as they become more impaired. A facility licensed to provide ECC services may also admit an individual who exceeds the admission criteria for a facility with a standard license if he or she is determined appropriate for admission to the ECC care facility. So basically, you can take people in that you might not otherwise have been able to take in, and you can keep people who might have been disqualified.
And you have to have paperwork for the ECC. They're going to look for that too.
Special paperwork.
Special paperwork.
So in order for extended congregate care services to be provided, the agency must first determine that all requirements established in law and rule are met, and must specifically designate on the facility's license, so your license must state that you have an ECC license, that such services may be provided, and whether the designation applies to all or part of the facility. So you have to designate at the time of licensure or relicensure which parts of your facility, specific areas, and you can change it on relicensure. Each existing facility that qualifies to provide ECC services must have maintained a standard license and may not have been subject to administrative sanctions during the previous 2 years or since initial licensure if the facility's been licensed for 2 years. And you want to go over some of the reasons that would disqualify them?
Right. You can't have a class 1 or a class 2 violation. You cannot have 3 or more repeat or recurring class 3 violations of identical or similar resident care standards for which a pattern of noncompliance is found by the agency. 3 or more class 3 violations that were not corrected in accordance with the corrective action plan approved by the agency. Violation of resident care standards, which results in requiring the facility to employ the services of a consult pharmacist or dietitian. You may not have a denial, suspension, or revocation of license for another facility licensed under this part in which the applicant for the extended congregate care license has at least 25% ownership interest. You may not have an imposition of a moratorium pursuant to this Chapter 408 or any other injunctive proceedings.
Yeah. The agency may deny or revoke a facility's ECC license for not meeting the criteria for an ECC license as provided in this paragraph. So if an assisted living facility has been licensed for less than 2 years, this is the change that they just recently made. If a facility has been licensed for less than 2 years, the initial extended congregate care license must be provisional. So when you first open, if it's less than 2 years, you only get a provisional license that cannot exceed more than 6 months. Once you've taken your first resident, the licensee has to notify the state after they take in their first ECC, extended congregate care resident, sorry about that, and after which an unannounced inspection shall be made to determine compliance with the requirements of an ECC license. The licensee of a provisional extended congregate care license that demonstrates compliance with all requirements of the ECC license during the inspection shall be issued a full license, extended congregate care license. In addition to the sanctions authorized under this part, if violations are found during the inspection and the licensee fails to demonstrate compliance with all assisted living facility requirements during a follow-up inspection, the licensee shall immediately suspend ECC care services, ECC services, and the provisional extended license expires. The agency may extend the provisional license for not more than 1 month in order to complete the follow-up visit. Let's see. Facilities licensed to provide ECC services shall maintain a written progress report on each person who receives services, which describes the type, amount, duration, scope, and outcome of services. So basically like nursing notes, right, Cheryl?
Yes.
and the general status of the resident's health. A registered nurse or appropriate designee representing the agency shall visit the facility at least twice a year to monitor residents who are receiving ECC services. So basically, you get 2 inspections a year. And what it also further goes on to say that the annual relicensure visit can be included as a double visit. So on those years, you might get one less. But the monitoring visits can be provided through contractual arrangements with appropriate community agencies if the state wants to do that. Monitoring visits may be provided through, a registered nurse shall serve as part of the team that inspects the facility. The agency may waive one of the requiring yearly monitoring visits for a facility that has, you want to take over the,
Yes,
okay,
held an ECC license for at least 24 months, 2 years. They've had no Class 1 or 2 violations and no uncorrected Class 3 violations. No Ombudsman Council complaints that resulted in a citation for their license. A facility that is licensed to provide ECC services must demonstrate the capability to meet unanticipated residents' service needs, offer a physical environment that promotes a home-like setting, provides for resident privacy, promotes resident independence, and allows sufficient congregate space as defined by the rule. They must have sufficient staff available, taking into account the physical, plant, and fire safety features of the building, to assist with evacuation of residents in an emergency. They must adopt and follow policies and procedures that maximize resident independence, dignity, choice, and decision-making to permit residents to age in place so that moves due to change in functional status are minimized or avoided. Allow residents, a resident representative, designee, surrogate, guardian, or attorney, in fact, to make a variety of personal choices, participate in developing service plans, and share responsibility in decision-making. They must implement the concept of managed risk, provide directly or through contract the service of person licensed under Chapter 464, which I think that would include hospice,
mhm.
right, and home health and third party. In addition to the training, which is mandated in 429.52, they must provide specialized training for their facility staff.
Right. So a facility that is licensed to provide ECC services is exempt from the criteria for continued residency set forth in 429.41. A licensed facility must adopt its own requirements within guidelines for continued residency set forth by rule. However, the facility may not serve residents who require 24-hour nursing supervision. A licensed facility that provides ECC services must also provide each resident with a written copy of the facility's policies governing admission and retention. So basically, you make your own policies and procedures regarding admission and retention, except they can't require 24-hour nursing supervision. Before the admission of an individual to a facility licensed to provide ECC services, the individual must undergo a medical examination as provided in the Florida statutes, and the facility must develop a preliminary service plan for the individual. This is basically the same thing with a standard license, right, Cheryl?
Yes.
Medical examination and then develop a preliminary care plan. If the facility can no longer provide or arrange for services in accordance with the resident's service plan and the needs of the facility's policies, the facility must make arrangements for relocating the person. And then it refers to the relocation rules. Okay. A limited nursing services license. Okay. I think that's it for licensing. Let me skip down where it covers. I think we covered that part. We covered, did we cover revoking? Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, we covered this part here. Let's see. We might be moving on to the Aspen regulation set
I
here.
think so. Yeah.
Let me just skip down.
Let's go into the Aspen regulations.
That we are on the
more.
Aspen regulation set. Okay, so I'm gonna try to let's just stop sharing this screen, and I'm gonna switch over to that. Okay, now you should see the Aspen regulation set. Do you
Yep.
see that on your screen?
Oh,
Okay.
I have it on mine. Hold on. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is the Aspen regulation set, basically what the surveyors are going to use. So we'll just go down what they're looking for. It basically pulls in the rules and gives interpretive guidelines. So ECC licensing. Now we did go over this already, some of this, but we may repeat ourselves, but that's the way it is. Okay, sure. Can you take this over? I got a message here. I got to respond to really quick. Okay.
So ECC licensing. Any facility that's intending to establish themselves as an ECC care service specially licensed facility, they must obtain a license from the agency before accepting residents that need ECC services. Only the portion of the facility that meets the physical requirements and are staffed in accordance with the subsection 4 is considered licensed to provide ECC services to residents who meet the admission criteria. What the surveyors will look for when they come out to survey your place is they will tour the facility, and they will see if does the ECC facility provide a home-like physical environment which promotes resident privacy and independence. And the surveyor probe for that is, in order for ECC services to be provided in a facility, the agency must first determine that all requirements in the law and rule are met, and some of the law and the rule are home-like physical environment that promotes the residency's privacy and independence.
Yeah, did I skip ahead? Where are you reading the survey probe here?
I was just on licensing. Now I'm going to ECC policies.
Oh, okay. So you were on a different section. Okay. So we're on ECC policies. I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
No problem. Go ahead.
Okay. So basically, extended congregate care policies. Oh, I was on the wrong. You were on licensing. Okay, so it was right above that. Sorry.
Right.
Yep. Now we move on to policies.
Policy.
Okay, so extended congregate care policy. So every ECC license has to have its own policies and procedures established through extended congregate care services. Must promote it. Your policies and procedures must promote resident independence, dignity, choice, decision making. The facility must develop and implement specific written policies and procedures that address aging in place, the facility's residency criteria developed in accordance with the admission and discharge requirements described, which we talked about, and extended congregate care services listed in subsection 8. Your policies and procedures also have to have the personal and supportive services the facility intends to provide, how the services will be provided, and the identification of staff positions to provide the services including their relationship to the facility. The nursing services the facility intends to provide, identification of staff positions to provide nursing services, and the license status, duties, general working hours, and supervision of such staff. Cheryl, can you take this from here? This person keeps calling. I'm sorry.
Okay. Stalker. So, unfortunately, I lost my place when he said that. So let's see. We're under policies. For the surveyor probe for policies, aging in place means the process of providing increased or adjusted services to a person to compensate for the physical or mental decline that may occur within the aging process. In order to maximize the person's dignity and independence and permit them to remain in a familiar, non-institutional residential environment for as long as possible. Such services must be provided by the facility staff or friends or through contractual arrangements with a third party.
Okay, I'm back. I see that. You did the surveyor probe. Just a note there, if you guys are applying for a job, don't keep calling the facility 4 times in a row if they
Is that
don't
what they were
answer.
doing? My goodness.
So, okay. So basically that's about, so the surveyor is going to come in and look at the policies and procedures, aging, right? Okay.
Yes.
Let's see. Let's go down to physical site requirements for ECC. All right, physical site requirements. Each extended congregate care facility must provide a home-like physical environment that promotes resident privacy and independence. A private room or apartment or a semi-private room or apartment shared with a roommate of the resident's choice. The entry door to the room or apartment must have a lock that is operable from the inside by the resident with no key needed. The resident must be provided with a key to the entry door on request. The resident service plan may allow for a non-locking entry door if the resident's safety would otherwise be jeopardized, and a bathroom with a toilet, sink, and bathtub or shower that is shared with a maximum of 4 residents for a maximum ratio of 4 residents to 1 bathroom. So that's, I think, different than standard. So your areas may need, I think it may be 6 to 1, but a centrally located hydro massage bathtub may substitute for a bathtub or a shower and be considered equivalent to 2 bathrooms, increasing the resident to bathroom ratio from 4 to 1 to 8 to 1. So if you have a hydro bathtub,
Massage.
it counts. Okay. The substitution of a centrally located hydro bathtub for a bathtub or a shower that increases the resident to bathroom ratio above 4 to 1 may occur only once in a facility. The one-time substitution of a centrally located hydro massage bathtub does not preclude the installation of multiple hydro massage bathtubs in the facility. The limitation applies only to the one-time reduction in the total number of bathrooms in the facility. The entry door to the bathroom must have a lock that the resident can operate from the inside with no key. The resident's service plan may allow for non-locking. Okay. So
Right.
that was a lot about hydro bathtubs there. I have a
Um,
feeling maybe the people that help write the bill have a hydro massage bathtub company too.
maybe. The
Okay.
surveyor probe. So what they're looking for, they are going to tour the ALF, including residents' rooms with their permission, and they're going to observe for a home-like environment. They're going to interview the residents regarding their satisfaction with the physical environment, and do they feel that the residents do they ask them if they feel that the ALF environment promotes privacy and independence. So those are things they're going to ask your ECC residents. They also do these kind of inspections in all licenses.
It's funny because I mean, home like is, I mean, it's, I guess it depends, right? What a home. All
Right.
right.
Well, you have small homes, like homes, living
Mm-hmm.
rooms, and then you have the large communities, which they make their common areas, like they have living
Living
rooms
rooms
and
and right,
dens and game
right,
rooms that kind of make it more home and just have more bedrooms.
right. Okay.
So we're at
So
staffing
let's move
requirements.
on. Staffing requirements. Okay. Whoop, page changed. Okay, staffing requirements, which is pulling from 58A-5.030.
The surveyor
Florida Administrative
probe
Code.
is going to be, they're going to interview the ECC supervisor and determine the scope of their responsibility. They're going to review personnel records to establish that the administrator and ECC supervisor meet the minimum education experience requirement. And they're going to verify nursing services where provided by a licensed nurse.
Right. So the rule is the following staff requirements apply for extended congregate care services. The supervision by an administrator who has a minimum of 2 years of managerial, nursing, social work, therapeutic, recreation, or counseling experience in a residential long-term care or acute care setting or agencies serving elderly or disabled persons. If the administrator appoints a manager as the supervisor of an ECC facility, both the administrator and manager must satisfy the requirements. So a bachelorette degree may be substituted for 1 year of required experience. A nursing home administrator license for the state of Florida is qualified under this paragraph. Let's see, B. So that was
Yeah.
about the supervisor. B is provide staff or contract the services of a nurse who must be available to provide nursing services, participate in the development of resident service plans, and perform monthly nursing assessments for extended congregate care residents. So you can have a nurse on staff or you can contract. Next is provide enough qualified staff to meet the needs of the ECC residents in accordance with staffing guidelines, and provide the services established in the residence service plan. So not only do you have to meet the traditional staffing standards, but you also have to meet it based on the service plan, which I think would apply for any license type. Ensure that adequate staff is awake during all hours to meet the scheduled and unscheduled needs of the residents. So regardless of what it says in the staffing standards, if you have an ECC and a service plan, you have to also meet the needs. Immediately provide additional or appropriately qualified staff when the agency determines that service plans are not being followed or that residents' needs are not being met because insufficient staffing. You also have to ensure that and document that staff receive extended congregate care training as required. And I think we go over that. The
We do.
extended congregate care. Okay.
And then also for the surveyor probe, on this page, they are going to review the resident service plans and observe resident care services to determine if the ALF has sufficient qualified staff to carry out the plan. And they're also going to interview the ECC residents and families regarding the availability of staff to ensure the service plans are implemented.
Okay. So let's move on to admission, ECC admission and continued residency. Whoop.
It jumps a
Okay.
little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So now let me read the rule. So regulation definition: facilities licensed to provide ECC services shall promote aging in place by determining appropriateness of continued residency based on comprehensive review. And we read this part already when we covered 429. So it's basically going to talk about continued residency. So what is the surveyor probe, Cheryl?
The surveyor probe is they're going to observe the ECC residents and determine if they meet the admission and continued residency requirements for ECC.
Which is in your own facilities policies procedures regarding ECC, right? Yep.
They're going to interview the ECC residents and verify what services the ALF is providing. Great.
And that's it.
Okay.
Okay, here's a 58A-5 regarding admission and continued residency. An individual must meet the following minimum criteria in order to receive ECC services. Be at least 18 years of age, which is the same. Be free from signs and symptoms of communicable disease that is likely to be transmitted to other residents or staff. However, an individual who has HIV infection may be admitted to a facility provided that he or she would otherwise be eligible for admission according to this rule. They must be able to transfer with assistance if necessary. The assistance of more than one individual is permitted. They must not be a danger to themselves or others as determined by a healthcare provider or a mental health practitioner.
They must not be bedridden. They can't have any stage 3 or 4 pressure sores. They may not require any of the following nursing services. Oral, or I can't pronounce that one.
Yeah, something suctioning.
Suctioning. Why did I pick this apart?
Nasogastric tube feeding, monitoring of blood gases.
Intermittent positive pressure breathing therapy. Skilled rehabilitative services. Treatment of a surgical incision, unless the surgical incision and the condition that caused it has been stabilized and a plan of care has been developed. They must not require 24-hour nursing supervision and have been determined to be appropriate for admission to the facility by the facility administrator or manager. The administrator or manager must base his or her decision on the following.
An assessment of the strengths, needs, and preferences of the individual, the health assessment required by subsection 6 of this rule, and the preliminary service plan developed in subsection 7. The facility's residency criteria and services offered or arranged for by the facility must meet the resident's needs. The ability of the facility to meet the uniform fire safety standards for assisted living facilities, criteria for continued residency in an ECC care services must be the same as the criteria for admission, except as follows. So continued residency, they have to meet the same, except a resident may be bedridden for up to 14 days. A terminally ill resident who no longer meets the criteria for continued residency may continue to reside in the facility if the following conditions are met. The resident qualifies for and is admitted to and consents to the services of a licensed hospice that coordinates and ensures the provision of any additional care and services that may be needed.
Continued.
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, your turn.
My turn. Continued residency is agreeable to the resident and the facility. An interdisciplinary care plan which specifies the services being provided by hospice and those being provided by the facility is developed and implemented by a licensed hospice in consultation with the facility. And documentation of the requirements of this subparagraph is maintained in the resident's file. They need the extended congregate care administrator or managers responsible for monitoring the appropriateness of continued residency of the resident in the ECC care services at all times.
Right. A hospice resident that meets the qualifications of continued residency pursuant to this rule may only receive services from the assisted living facility staff within the scope of the facility's license. What does that mean? A hospice resident that meets the qualifications for continued. Right. So the hospice has to do what they can do, and the facility can only do what they can under their license. The staff may provide any nursing service permitted under the facility's license and total help with the activities of daily living for residents admitted to hospice. So staff can provide total help for things. Staff may not exceed the scope of their professional license or training in any licensed assisted living facility. That's a pretty simple statement. Okay, so we did the Surveyor Pro. Let's move on to the health assessment for ECC license. That's a short one here.
What the surveyor is going to look for is they're going to review the health assessments and determine if they reflect an examination by a physician or advanced registered nurse practitioner. The health assessment, before receiving ECC services, all persons, including residents transferring within the same facility to that portion of the facility that's licensed for ECC services, must be examined by a healthcare provider, and a health assessment conducted no more than 60 days before receiving ECC services meet this requirement. Once receiving services, a new health assessment must be obtained at least annually. So that's something that's different.
So annually instead of every 3 years.
Instead of every 3 years. Okay, there's a difference right there.
So that's also, even if they're within your facility, they're transferring. That's considered. You need a whole new health assessment.
Correct.
Okay, service plans. Let me read the rule, and then you can read the Surveyor Pro. So service plans. Before receiving services, the ECC administrator or manager must develop a preliminary service plan that includes an assessment of whether the resident meets the facility's residency criteria, an appraisal of the resident's unique physical, psychological, or social needs and preferences, and an evaluation of the facility's ability to meet the resident's needs. Within 14 days of receiving services, the ECC administrator or manager must coordinate the development of a written service plan that takes into account the resident's health assessment obtained pursuant to Section 6, the resident's unique physical, psychological, social needs and preferences, and how the facility will meet these needs, including the following if required. So let me just back up. So before the services are offered, there has to be a preliminary plan, and then within 14 days, there's a written full plan. And then monitor, so it's got to include health monitoring, assistance with personal care services, nursing services, supervision, special diets, ancillary services provided, the provision of other services such as transportation and supportive services.
Mm-hmm.
And
In the manner of the service provision and identification of service providers, including family and friends, in keeping with the resident preferences, pursuant to the definitions of shared responsibility and managed risk. The service plan must be developed and agreed upon by the resident's representative or designee, surrogate guardian, or attorney-in-fact. It must reflect responsibility and right of the resident to consider options and assume risk when making choices pertaining to the resident's service needs and preferences. The service plan must be reviewed and updated quarterly to reflect any changes in the manner of service provision, accommodate any changes in the resident's physical or mental status, or any recommendations for modifications to the resident's care as documented in the nursing assessment. So there's a big difference there too. I need that quarterly updated. The surveyor's probe, when they come in, ACA comes in, they're going to review resident service plans for evidence of the required elements. They're going to observe resident care and services provided, interview the resident or their representative to determine if they participate in the development of the plan. That's shared responsibility. And is there evidence the service plans were reviewed and updated quarterly? And do they reflect the residents' current needs?
right. So this
Paperwork.
that's going to be okay. Let's move on to ECC services. Well, okay. Extended congregate care services. All services must be provided in the least restrictive environment in a manner that respects the resident's independence, privacy, and dignity. A facility providing ECC services may provide supportive services, including social service needs, counseling, emotional support, networking, assistance with securing social and leisure services, shopping service, escort service, companionship, family support, information and referral, assistance in developing and implementing self-directed activities, and volunteer services. Family or friends must be encouraged to provide supportive services for residents. The facility must provide training for family or friends to be able to enable them to provide supportive services in accordance with the resident service plan. A facility providing ECC services must make available the following additional services if required by the resident service plan: total help with bathing, dressing, grooming, and toileting. Now, nursing assessments conducted more frequently than monthly, measuring and recording of basic vital functions and weight, dietary management, including provisions of special diets, monitoring nutrition, and observing the resident's food and fluid intake and output, assistance with self-administered medication or the administration of medications and treatments pursuant to a healthcare provider's order. If the individual needs assistance with self-administration, the facility must inform the resident of the qualifications of staff who are providing this assistance, which is basically the form that we all use, the informed consent. Supervision of residents with dementia and cognitive impairments, health education, counseling, and implementation of health promoting programs and preventative regimes, provision or arrangement of rehabilitative services, and provision of escort services to health-related appointments. Nursing staff providing extended congregate care services may provide any nursing service permitted within the scope of their license, consistent with the residency requirements of this rule and the facility's written policies and procedures.
They also must authorize by a healthcare provider the orders pursuant to the care plan that they're medically necessary and appropriate for treatment of the resident's condition in accordance with the prevailing standard of practice in the nursing community, a service that can be safely, effectively, and efficiently provided in the facility, recorded in nursing progress notes and in accordance with the resident service plan. At least monthly or more frequently, it's required by the resident service plan a nursing assessment of the resident must be conducted. So they must do at least monthly or more frequent nursing assessments.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go back up to the surveyor
Survey
probe.
probe, yeah.
Their surveyor probe, they're going to observe resident. Oops, I'm sorry, I lost it.
Yeah, resident care and services, interview residents or their representatives.
Does the EC program meet the residents' needs? And verify nursing services were provided by a licensed nurse. And is there evidence of the nursing assessments? So they'll be looking for those too. So keep nice records in a nice file.
All right. Let's see here.
Records is next.
Records. Okay. In addition to the records required, which are for a standard license, a facility providing ECC services must maintain the following. The service plans, I feel like we're repeating ourselves, but that's the way. Yeah, the service plans for each resident receiving extended congregate care services, nursing progress notes for each resident receiving nursing services, nursing assessments, which we just talked about, the facility extended congregate care policies and procedures. So these are the extra records that you need. And that's that. So surveyor probe, does the service plan include the required elements? And the service plan we covered in the previous one, but that's records for you. Discharge, go ahead.
The surveyor probe the rule is 45 days. So discharge, if the facility and the resident are unable to agree on a service plan, the facility is unable to meet the resident's needs as identified in the service plan, or the resident no longer meets the criteria for continued residency, the resident must be discharged or relocated in accordance with the rule, which is 45 days notice. Yeah. So the surveyor is going to look to make sure that at least 45 days notice of relocation or termination of residency has been given, and you can refer to the Resident Bill of Rights.
All right. Okay, training, and we are almost done. So extended congregate care training, the administrator and the extended congregate care supervisor, if different from the administrator, must complete core training and 4 hours of initial training in extended congregate care prior to the facility receiving its extended congregate care license or within 3 months of beginning employment in the facility as an administrator or ECC supervisor. So basically, the administrator and the ECC care supervisor, if they're different from the administrator, must complete core training plus 4 hours of ECC.
The surveyor is going to review the records, and they're going to review the training records for the administrator, the ECC supervisor, and the direct care staff to look for that required training. So they're going to look for the ALF core training, the ECC training, and continuing education on top of all the other training requirements for just a standard license ALF.
Right. Now, okay, I don't know how they would determine it, but basically what it says here, it also says that ECC core training is the prerequisite. So, I mean, you could have maybe if you took ECC training first and then core training, it wouldn't. I don't know if it matters. Okay. The administrator or the ECC supervisor, if different from the administrator, must complete a minimum of 4 hours of continuing education every 2 years. So basically 2 hours every year in topics related to the physical, psychological, or social needs of frail, elderly, or disabled persons, or persons with Alzheimer's disease or related disorders. Now, you can get this training on our website. We have lots of training that would suffice that rule, especially with our subscription package for your facility. It's a no-brainer. It's pretty easy.
Let me go back to something, Clay, because the prerequisite of ALF core is it looks like you need to take the core first, and then you take your 4 hours.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I think you left it a little up in the air. So just wanted to make sure that everybody understood.
That's what I was saying. If you could technically, maybe you have taken ECC someplace else and then you don't have core. I think that they're going to want to see the core training and then see the ECC. Technically, you could get one of those surveyors. Let's see. So you need 4 hours of continuing education, And all direct care staff providing care to residents in an extended congregate care program must complete at least 2 hours of in-service training provided by the facility administrator or ECC supervisor within 6 months of beginning employment in the facility. Training must address extended congregate care concepts and requirements, including statutory and rule requirements, and delivery of personal care and supportive services in an ECC facility. So direct care staff need 2 hours provided by the facility administrator or ECC supervisor within 6 months. And that's that.
And that's it.
I know.
There's a few differences
There
for
are.
ECC paperwork, resident, assessments, and making sure that they're in on the care plan and different things. So
Yep.
know
All
those
right.
rules. Get your paperwork in order.
So I think that's it, Cheryl.
All right. Have a great day.
Okay. Bye.